ever feel like you want to be better prepared for emergencies, but aren't sure where to start or how to find the time with all of your other responsibilities? We hear you, and that's where Preparedness in Your Pocket comes in. This podcast is your portable solution for accessible emergency preparedness education. Our episodes are pocket-sized yet packed with important preparedness information, making them easy to digest and learn from wherever you are. Preparedness in Your Pocket is brought to you by the Maryland Emergency Preparedness Network, a dedicated communications network providing no-cost emergency preparedness education, training, and resources to home and community-based professionals, patients, and their caregivers. My name is Kendall Lee, and I am the EPN's Program Administrator and your host. On behalf of the EPN, we invite you to make this podcast an essential part of your preparedness toolkit. Just like keeping your keys and wallets close, think of this podcast as your preparedness partner, on the go, always ready to support you with valuable emergency preparedness tips. Join us as we empower you to be better prepared for emergencies, one podcast at a time. Welcome back to another episode of Preparedness in Your Pocket. I'm your host, Kendall Lee, and I'm so glad to have you here with us today. In our first few episodes, we spoke with experts about emergency alerts and warnings, and today we're focusing on something else that affects all of us, the weather. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to appreciate how the weather is truly the unsung hero of nearly every conversation we have. Think about it. How often does the weather come up when you're chatting with someone? Whether we're celebrating a sunny day or commiserating over a storm, the weather is one of those universal topics that we turn to when we don't know what to say or when we simply want to connect. And while we can't control the weather, what we can control is how we respond to it. And so in today's episode, we will be exploring weather alerts. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what a weather alert is, who issues them, how they're sent out, when they're sent out, and where they're sent out. The differences between the types of alerts, such as weather watches, advisories, and warnings, why understanding the information found in weather alerts is key to your preparedness response, and lastly, how to sign up for weather alerts to stay informed. To help us break it all down is our special guest, Austin Mansfield. Austin is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Sterling, Virginia, where he serves as the program coordinator for the Marine, Outreach, SKYWARN Storm Spotting, and GIS programs. He holds a master's degree in meteorology from UNC Charlotte and an applied atmospheric science degree from East Carolina University. Over the past 5 years at the National Weather Service, Austin has provided high-level weather briefings to officials at all levels, including the White House and the Pentagon. But what truly drives him is his passion for educating the public and decision makers on how to prepare for and respond to weather events. Austin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm really excited for this.
I'm really excited too. Now that we've set the stage for this episode, I'm so excited to dive into today's topic. So to get us started, let's first define what a weather alert is. So, according to the National Weather Service, a weather alert is an official message issued to the public that warns of impending hazardous conditions related to weather events. These alerts are crucial in helping us stay informed and take necessary action to protect ourselves and our community. So now that we have that understanding, Austin, can you share with us who is responsible for issuing weather alerts and what their role is?
Yeah, of course. Your local National Weather Service office, along with roughly 121 other offices across the country, are the ones responsible for those life-saving
Mm.
alerts to the public. At our office, there's at least two of us in operations at all
Mhm.
times, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Mother Nature doesn't take a day off, and neither do
Yes.
we. Our main mission here at the Weather Service is in the business of protecting lives and property. And one of those crucial ways we can fulfill that mission is with these weather alerts, with giving that potentially life-saving notice.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so important for our listeners to know that behind these messages, they're people, and you do happen to be one of them. So thank you for that. Now that we understand who's sending them out, let's dive into the what behind weather alerts. So, what type of weather alerts are sent out, and then what kind of information do they typically provide?
The main alerts that we send out, we kind of want to categorize it into
Hmm.
three different types. So you have your watches, your warnings, and your advisories. And they're going to provide a number of different things depending on the product, but they're used to convey, like we're talking about now, the what, the when, the where aspects on that potential hazard. We use these to give as much advance notice as we can when we become more confident in that particular event happening. An example of, a severe thunderstorm watch is where we would want to issue a product like that. We have to figure out our confidence level in that particular hazard occurring. For example, if we're seeing in the weather models there's a potential for storms 2 weeks from now, we don't want to issue an advisory or a watch that far out. We want to make sure that we grow confident in that potential hazard happening, because we don't want
Hmm.
to over forecast and then end up underperforming in our forecast. We want to get to that sweet spot to give as much advance notice, but also be efficient in our forecast.
I appreciate you sharing that. So it sounds like then the confidence factor is incredibly important in determining when information gets released, which then moves us to the when. So timing seems to be everything when it comes to weather alerts. Can you share a bit more then when these alerts are typically issued, and then how that timing then plays a critical role in helping us to prepare or act?
Yeah, of course. The timing aspect is very important to us. When it comes to a watch, we want to issue these well ahead of a potential hazard. We have long term hazards and short term hazards.
Hmm.
For a long term hazard, these are events like snowstorms or tropical systems that we're anticipating, many days out. So we would issue a watch for these types of storms a few days out to give people ample amounts of time to prepare. And for a short-term hazard like a severe
Hmm.
thunderstorm, which could impact you over a mere matter of minutes, we get a lot more confident within a 3 to 6 hour time frame of the potential for severe storms. So we will use a watch around that point to get the product
Hmm.
out. For the warnings and advisories, we shorten up that issuance time so
Hmm.
closer to the hazard impacting that event. When we talk about warnings and advisories, these are going to be more, you need to take action at that point versus preparing yourself during a watch and making sure you have a plan in place.
Thank you for sharing that. So, to recap, it sounds like there are two categories then in terms of when these alerts are distributed, the short versus the long term. It sounds like there is a framework of thinking or a protocol that has been developed to determine which type of weather events fall into either of those categories and when that information is released, which I imagine is all evidence-based, of course. So I think that's important for our listeners to know that all messaging that comes through to us is incredibly thought through and intentional from the information that's being given, but the timing that it's actually being delivered. So thank you for sharing that. Now let's talk about the where. So weather alerts are sent out in many ways through many different channels. So can you share with our listeners here where people can expect to receive these alerts, and then how to make sure that they don't miss them?
The goal over the years has been to give access to many different places as possible for our weather warnings. And you could get these through your phone in a number of ways, like our wireless emergency alerts or
Hmm.
WIA that automatically chime your smartphone if there's a
Hmm.
life threatening event like a tornado warning or a flash flood warning happening over your area. They do have a way that is the feature is turned off sometimes. So please
Hmm.
make sure that it is not turned off on your device. You can contact your local phone provider to figure out the best course of action to making sure that it is turned on. You can also get our alerts through apps like private apps or the
Hmm.
FEMA app or the
Hmm.
Red Cross emergency app. Your local broadcast TV station may also have an app. We send them via social media updates throughout the day. The,
Hmm.
the fastest way, really, to get our products is actually through our NOAA weather radios. These are
Hmm.
fairly priced radios, but as soon as my finger hits the button to release that product, you're going to get that alert over NOAA weather radio within seconds. Most of our products are still fast and life-saving, but the weather radio is the quickest. We also
Mm,
have our webpage, weather.gov, and that provides all the current hazards and products for the entire country right at your fingertips.
wow.
So we have a lot of different ways that you can get our life-saving alerts across many different avenues and
Awesome.
ways, and can happen anytime you're in any situation, whether it be outside, in your home, in a
Mm-hmm.
car, in the mall, anything like that. We have ways that you can get these alerts. It's just a matter of making sure that you're prepared before it becomes into action.
Thank you so much. This information is readily available and accessible through many different forms, and it's designed or done so that the information can meet us when we need it, but wherever we are. So, thank you for sharing that. Now that we have a solid understanding of the who, what, when, and where of weather alerts, let's break down the different types of alerts and explore why understanding them is key to staying prepared. The National Weather Service sends out different types of weather alerts depending on the severity and the likelihood of a weather event, as we mentioned before. Understanding the differences between the different types of weather alerts empowers us to know when to start preparing versus when to take immediate action. So, Austin, I'd love you to walk our listeners through the differences between the alert types that we can expect to receive. So, next, let's talk about a weather watch. What is a weather watch and when can we expect one to be issued?
For a weather watch, we have conditions that are favorable for an event to happen. So we'll take, for example, a tornado watch.
Hmm.
That means that we have the right ingredients or parameters or ways that this can be produced in terms of a tornado, but we don't have any tornadoes occurring at that point. So
Okay.
the conditions are ripe and ready for it to occur, but it hasn't happened yet. And this is really where that preparation stage is. This is where you want to make sure you have your last minute preparations for the event to occur, potentially to happen. Just because you're under a tornado watch doesn't mean you're going to have a tornado. This just means that we do have the potential for this to happen
Potential.
across your area. We want to make sure that we give as much notice as possible in the event that it does occur. Just because it hasn't happened in your area doesn't mean it won't happen. We want to make sure that everyone takes these weather watches seriously when we do issue them.
So it sounds like watch is there's the potential for an event to take place, and this is your prep stage in the event that it does. So let's then now talk about an advisory. Can you explain what a weather advisory is and then when one of those is typically issued?
Yeah. So an advisory is sometimes described as a less life-threatening hazard compared to some of our other hazards we issue. But I really want to reiterate and make sure that I get this clear across that it doesn't mean that they cannot be life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
Any product we issue can be life-threatening, and that's why we're issuing these products. So something like a dense fog advisory may not be affecting you inside your home, but it can be very impactful for you or someone you care about driving 70 miles per hour down a busy highway. These weather advisories, just because they may sound less intense or impactful compared to some of our warnings, that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't put your guard down. We want to make sure you keep your guard up during these types of events. So the weather advisory itself, it's very similar to a warning. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But the difference between the two is the way that we describe the less life-threatening hazards compared to our more impactful hazards that could potentially have greater severity or greater chances for becoming more life impacting.
So there's weather watch, there's a weather advisory. In a moment, we're going to talk about a warning, but these different types of alerts are advancing in severity via almost a step system, as we've talked about. So lastly, let's get into a weather warning. What is then a weather warning and when is it issued?
When we issue a warning, that means that action is necessary, that it's time to enact on your plans that you've had in place. Make sure you have the right preparations made to be in the safe place during a certain type of event. For a tornado warning, for example, this is when you want to get down to the lowest possible floor in a room with no windows. Make sure you have something covering you from outside elements impacting you. When it comes to a warning, we want to make sure that we already know where to go before it happens. We don't want these types of warnings to surprise you during these types of events. Another one, we talked about that short-term versus long-term hazards. If we issue a winter storm warning, that means that we're expecting, a certain number of inches or a certain amount of ice accumulation. We want to make sure that you stay prepared in knowing that if you live in a home where you need to take care of certain aspects of your home, whether it be making sure that all your pipes are not going to freeze over, we want to make sure that you have enough warmth to last in case we have power outages. If you're driving, make sure that you use extra caution when driving during those types of events. And we're going to provide that in those warnings. When we talk about
Mm-hmm.
issuing these warnings, they're not just going to say we have a severe thunderstorm warning. We're going to talk about a lot of things in those products. And that's why it's crucial to not just understand that there is a warning, but to understand why is there a warning? Where is it happening? What are the impacts that it's providing? For example, a severe thunderstorm warning has a lot of different connotations. We could have a base severe thunderstorm warning that has winds in excess of 60 miles per hour and quarter size hail, but then we can also issue a severe thunderstorm warning that has winds in excess of 100 miles per hour, grapefruit size hail. Hopefully that never happens, but just a situation where the impacts are going to be a lot different based off of that warning, but it's still going to be the same product. So that's why it's
Mm-hmm.
crucial to make sure you understand what's happening in that product and listen or visually look at what is happening with those products and understand the potential impacts that we provide in those products.
Thank you for sharing that. To clarify and confirm for our listeners, so when you say product, are you equating that to the weather alert or the messaging that's being delivered and received?
Yeah, the product itself is more so talking about the winter storm warning, the severe thunderstorm watch. It's just when we say product, that's the
Mm-hmm.
actual element that we're sending out a
Mm-hmm.
certain type of product that is associated with whatever type of weather hazard is happening.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, to summarize for our listeners here, because as much as I'm a host, I'm also a listener in this portable classroom that we have here on the podcast. So, it sounds like a weather watch is potential for a weather event to take place. And this is the time that you need to prepare to respond if in fact that were to come to fruition. And then we have what is called an advisory, which is similar to that of a watch, that there's a higher concern for more life-threatening impacts with an advisory.
The likelihood of higher impacts would be, for most situations, would be for a warning, but there are still life threatening impacts that could happen with advisories.
Okay. And then lastly, with the warning, this is your time to act, that not only the ingredients have come together, they are active and the weather event is imminently occurring. Am I correct there as
Yep,
well? Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so thank you so much, Austin, for breaking down these differences for us here. These definitions were so incredibly helpful to learn about, and now I'd love to apply them in a creative way to help them stick. So, for our Maryland listeners out there, we all know you appreciate a good crab cake. So, let's use an analogy to illustrate the differences between a watch, an advisory, and a warning. Imagine a crab cake represents the weather event and its ingredients symbolize the conditions that create that event. Austin, can you walk us through how this analogy then applies to each type of weather alert we learned about?
This is something that I always try to convey across anytime I'm trying
Mhm.
to educate the public on the differences between a watch and a warning, because there still is room to grow in terms of being able to convey this message in the public to understand it. Things like this is really helpful and it really sticks with people. When we talk about a crab cake watch, we have the ingredients for the crab cake to be made. So we have the crab meat, we have the eggs, the mayonnaise, any type of filler that you enjoy. We have these available and ready to go, but we don't have the crab cakes made just yet. We're still in that ingredients phase.
Mhm.
We've gathered our ingredients. They're there. They're ready to be used if needed. And so when we go from a crab cake watch to a crab cake warning, crab cakes have been made. We now have crab cakes ready to enjoy, ready to devour. Because I know a lot of Marylanders love their crab cakes. But the big thing is just understanding the difference between the watch versus the warning. With those watches, you have those ingredients, you have the means necessary to have that particular event or that particular delicious food to be made. And then with warning, you've created this particular product, you've created this particular food dish, and it has been made. It's ready to go, you're ready to eat it, or you're ready to take action during these weather hazards. We do have a warning out. This is one that I love making sure that I get across. And it may seem like I'm keep reiterating why it's so important, but it really is, in understanding the differences, because if you do not take action during a warning, that could be life threatening. So we want to make sure that the public knows that the difference between a watch versus a warning. One, with a watch, you're making sure you have your preparations in place and that you're ready to take action if
Mm-hmm.
needed. And a warning, you are now required, or you should take action as needed during those types of events.
Thank you so much. I think it's so helpful to take information that can otherwise be complex to understand and apply it to something that allows us to tap into our creativity and our imagination via this crab cake analogy. So thank you for indulging me there, Austin, but also our listeners. My only note is you needed to mention adding a little Old Bay. So I'm like, you got to come on down. You got to come on down to Maryland from Virginia. No, I'm just teasing you. I'm giving you a hard time. But our Marylanders would say, where's the Old Bay? Anyway, okay, listeners, now that we've served up a solid understanding of watches, warnings, and advisories, let's put this knowledge to the test. Just like knowing the right ingredients makes for a perfect crab cake, as we've said, knowing the right alert can help you make the best decision when severe weather is on the way. So let's walk through a real world scenario then to see how this all comes together. Given that we have entered the spring season, you know what they say, April showers bring May flowers, and severe thunderstorms commonly happen here in Maryland. So Austin, I'd love for you then to support our listeners' understanding in the differences between a severe thunderstorm watch versus a severe thunderstorm warning. So, could you explain then what each one means? And then what are the actions someone would need to take if they receive these type of alerts, whether they're at home versus whether they're in their car?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first part with a severe thunderstorm watch versus a warning, we've really tried to reiterate that. So, for a severe thunderstorm watch, we're going to issue this again in that 3 to 6 hour time frame before the expectation of a severe thunderstorm to occur across our area. But that's kind of the time where we want to make sure we have those preparations in place. It's going to depend on where you're at. If you're at home, you want to make sure that you have flashlights available in case you do have a power outage. You want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that if you have like loose furniture outside, that you can make sure that that's tied down in the event that we do have strong winds. If you have something like a carport and you want to put your car under a carport or under a way to keep it out from the elements, that's certainly also helpful. You want to make sure that you have a way to get our alerts, because we've issued a severe thunderstorm watch. That doesn't mean that's the last product that we issue for you. We could issue
Mm-hmm.
a severe thunderstorm warning, we could issue a tornado warning, anything like that, a flash flood warning. When we issue these types of products, you want to make sure that you have the right materials for wherever you are. So if you're in your car, we want to make sure that you know where to go in the event that we do issue a severe thunderstorm. If it does happen, while you're in a car or while you're traveling, try
Mm-hmm.
to find a safe place like a parking garage, or somewhere where you can get inside and get into a more safe environment, because cars are very susceptible to potential impacts from severe
Mm-hmm.
thunderstorms, whether it be falling trees or large hail. You could even have situations where you slide from wet road conditions. There's just so many different things that could happen while you're in a car. The same thing could happen while you're at home, but there is ways that you can take better preparedness while being at home or in a place that's more secure than a car. The main thing is making sure that you know what preparations to make, not only just for yourself, but also for others. We want the public to share this information. We don't want you to keep this information that we send to you to yourself. We want you to call all your friends. We want you to call your family members, call your pastor, call anybody that you would like to call, and let them know in the event that we do have these types of hazards happening. Make sure that they're prepared. Give them a call, give them a text, anything like that. We want to make sure that we give as much notice to as many people as we can in the event of these types of hazards.
We appreciate that. We always say over here, sharing is caring. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so now that we've applied our knowledge about the different types of weather alerts, the watches, advisories, and warnings via this scenario, let's come back to why this knowledge is so important. When we understand what each alert means, we also then understand what actions to take and when to take them. So, Austin, I'd love to have you speak more on this. So, could you talk about how understanding these alerts helps people know when to prepare in advance versus when to take immediate action?
With these types of alerts, whether it be a watch versus a warning, we just want to make sure that the public understands each of these products as much as they can, because these products, they do differ between. With a watch, that's just saying we want to make sure that you have that plan in place, and then a warning or advisory, we want to make sure you take action at that point. So knowing what the hazards are is really important, and we have a
Mm-hmm.
great product for that. If you go to our website and you look up our hazardous weather outlook, it's our HWO for short. This is going to talk about all the hazards that we're expecting over the next 7 days. That's a
Mm.
great starting point to start your day. Take a few seconds, like 30 seconds, to go to our webpage, look up our hazardous weather outlook, and that's going to give you a lot of information on the potential hazards that we're expecting for that day. That's already getting in your mind to let you know of the potential impacts that could happen across your area. The difference between 60-mile-per-hour winds versus 100-mile-per-hour winds is extensive. So knowing the potential impacts for that, and also, your area better than anyone when we talk about potential impacts for an area. For example, we'll issue a severe thunderstorm warning for places like Fairfax County, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll issue the same type of severe thunderstorm warning or impact for somewhere down in like Southwest Virginia. The amount of trees that can come down in Fairfax County is just mind blowing sometimes, just based off of the soil. Knowing that those impacts can be greater in those areas, we take that into account when we're issuing these products. But we need you to understand, the potential impacts that can happen in your area as well. So having that plan in place when we issue these watches is important, but also knowing where to take that action and why to take that action during a certain type of event, like a severe thunderstorm warning, is also just equally as important.
Thank you. It sounds like context is key. Weather alerts are designed to give people, as you said, enough time to make informed decisions. So, Austin, can you share with us just once more why this timing is so critical, especially in fast changing situations?
Yeah, absolutely. A winter storm warning, you have hours, even a day to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
A tornado warning, you have minutes to maybe even seconds to prepare. Knowing what to do in each one of those types of
Mm-hmm.
situations is so important. And the timing aspect is one of the more crucial ones in knowing how fast and how much time you have. But we never want anyone to wait to the last minute to make these preparations. This is why I'm reaching out to provide outreach on why these weather alerts are so
Mm-hmm.
important for the community and why it makes an impact. I've got many success stories with being able to issue these types of products out. They took our warning seriously and they knew what to do, how to do it, and they did it swiftly and safely and carefully.
At the end of the day, these alerts aren't just notifications, as we've mentioned. They are tools that help us respond safely and effectively and in a timely manner to weather events. So, now that we know how they support our preparedness, let's talk more about how to make sure you can receive them so that you're always informed no matter where you are. Before we explore how to sign up for weather alerts, it's important to remember that weather alerts are only effective if they reach you in time and in a means that's accessible to you. So that's why it's incredibly valuable to have multiple different ways to stay informed, especially during severe weather. So, Austin, can you share with our listeners some of the ways that they can sign up to receive weather alerts?
A couple of them we've already touched on with one,
Mm-hmm.
for example, our wireless emergency alerts.
Yes.
So if you do have a mobile device or a smartphone, the WIA is already registered in the phones, but there are ways that you can have them turned off, but we do not suggest that. We always suggest making sure that you have those alerts turned on. So those are going to be automatically sent to your mobile devices in the event of extreme weather. That's one way that you can get them. And you're not going to get an alert for every single type of hazard. We have specific hazards that we need to make sure that the public is aware whether they're sleeping or not. So a tornado warning, for example, it does not bother me to wake you up during a tornado warning because I want to make sure that
We're
you are
safe.
safe and sound during those types of events. Our NOAA weather radios, again, that's that 24/7 alerts with the specific receivers that are available for
Hmm.
added accessibility and being able to understand when our products are issued and what the products are used for during those times. The weather radio, it does provide a little bit more information continuously. So
Hmm.
these transmitters are going to relay the temperature for the day, They'll relay if there's any hazards over the next 7 days. They'll relay the water temperature in some cases. Just a lot of good, useful information that
Mm-hmm.
you can have on in the background, or you could just have it set to specific requirements or elements for specific hazards that we have out. These weather and emergency apps, some of them are more private apps. The Weather Service alone does not have a specific app just yet. That's hopefully we're going to have that in the future, but there are other applications that you can use on your smartphones and mobile devices for
Mm-hmm.
getting our alerts out, because at the end of the day, our alerts are the only ones that actually are being received by the public and are actually federally mandated. We send out an alert that we're specifically issuing it for those areas. And so those applications, they can have them set to where if it does occur in your area, that it sends you an alert, and you can have them very customizable to where you can set it up however way you want it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of different good options out there. I can't recommend a specific one.
Yeah.
We do know that there's plenty of them out there that are really useful and do convey the same information that we provide. And then you also have your TV and radio and social media. So those are becoming the more traditional and digital alert resources. So knowing what TV stations you watch, they can also have their own applications. Radio broadcasts, they can have it set up where they go into a special broadcast for certain hazards like tornado warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, we're going to be updating social media at our office. We do that all day, every day. We have it automatically set up for certain hazards like severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. Those are going to automatically be tweeted out. As soon as I click the button to issue the severe thunderstorm warning, that's going to go automatically out to the public. So we know social media has become a rising thing over the last 10 to 15 years, and that's certainly something that we're going to continue to convey and use for that information. The other one is word of mouth, letting the public know, and letting your friends know, letting your family know. Word of mouth travels really fast, especially when it comes to events like a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning, winter storms, anything like that. There's just so many different ways that you can get the message across, but it's just a matter of making sure you have the available resources during that time. We could have the public be in a situation where they don't have the resources for a mobile device or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. There are ways that we can get that information. You can work with your local county officials and being able to get those resources. Another example, we have various counties and different cities. They also have special alarm systems that go off, like for a
Mm-hmm.
tornado warning. It's a little bit more popular out west, but it's becoming a little bit more mainstream
Mm-hmm.
across this area as well. Any way that we can get the word across, I don't care if I have to send an owl to your house to let you know that in the
A
event
messenger pigeon.
yeah, anything like that. Anything we could do to get the word across, I think is just so crucial and so important. So we try to give as much available resources and as many examples as we can to get the word across.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It sounds like the National Weather Service is just dedicated to meeting us where we are with the information that we need. And thank you for sharing the many different ways that we can receive and retrieve information. If we are on the road, is there messaging that's available that information could be received about an impending weather event?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you talked about highways. We work
Mm-hmm.
with different Department of Highways and Department of Transportations to get the message across. And so sometimes you'll be back in winter where we saw you're driving down a major interstate and you see that it says potential winter weather happening Wednesday or whatever day it is. They use that on their big message boards that you cross under. Another way is that car makers are actually getting more into sending out weather alerts. Some of the newer vehicles are starting to have that. You can also have it set up where your mobile device, it's automatically going to get an alert based off of where your location
Mm-hmm.
is. So if your phone pings off of a certain transmitter tower and it knows that you're within that polygon that we issue a warning for, it'll automatically send that message to you as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can get that across. And then if you're listening to radio, that's going to also sound off if we
Mm-hmm.
have something like a tornado warning or a flash flood warning. That's going to be a way that you can get the message across as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for those of us that are on the road, whether you are transporting yourself by driving or being transported. It's important to know that information is still accessible while you're on the road. It sounds like there are many resources like the wireless emergency alerts that, again, we can contact our local phone service provider to learn how we can make sure those type of alerts are turned on. The NOAA weather radio, I wanted to pause there and inquire, learn more, that if I was interested myself in ordering a NOAA weather alert radio, how and which would I go about doing that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of weather radios out there. There's not a specific one that I'm going to recommend, but there are ways you can get them at your local media technology types of shops. Any type of place that has like emergency preparedness
Hmm.
equipment, they're usually going to have those.
That's great to know. And then we talked also again about those weather and emergency apps, and it's just making sure that those are credible. And then lastly, we talked about TV, radio, and social media. I personally follow you being the National Weather Service on social media for my area, Baltimore, Washington, and the EPN does as well. It's incredibly informative because it connects us using social media for weather alerts. So, with that, staying informed is important to everyone, as we know. And so it's important to mention that not everybody receives weather alerts in the same way. And so for individuals who are in the deaf, hard of hearing, blind, or low vision community, there are additional tools to make sure that those in this community get these critical weather alerts in an accessible way because, again, preparedness is and should be for everybody. So, Austin, can you now share with our listeners some options that are available for those in these particular communities?
Yeah, of course. With the deaf and hard of hearing community, there's quite a number of options. So with our wireless emergency alerts, we have those text-based alerts with vibrations and loud tones that come across. With our NOAA weather radio, we do have visual alerts that can sound off with flashing lights or vibrations or visual displays. Some of the apps, they have the push notifications with visual or text-based alerts that you can try to see. We also have captioning and sign language on TV that's available through emergency broadcasts with captions or interpreters during certain events, especially like high profile events like a hurricane or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So let's say like the governor is doing a special announcement
Mm-hmm.
regarding it, that they can have interpreters for that. And then also bed shakers and strobe light alarms. So those alerts designed to wake individuals during like nighttime emergencies is also one. And then for the blind and low vision community, there's a number of options as well. With our weather radios, we have announcements via audio instead of over text. Smartphones, we have screen readers like VoiceOver or TalkBack. The WIA alerts with audio, more accessible for spoken messages rather than getting on text products. Our smart home integrations, if you do have a smart home, you can
Mm-hmm.
have alerts announced via the voice assistants for that. And then community networks and support systems. We want to make sure we take care of our friends, family, caregivers. Helping relay that information is also really crucial. So we have plenty of resources that we can provide, and other partners and agencies have been able to help us in being able to convey the message for these
Mm-hmm.
alerts.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because I think, when it comes to safety, everyone deserves a seat at the table. So I appreciate you taking the time to have these conversations. And I just wanted to particularly emphasize that safety shouldn't be a luxury or access to safety information. And for those of us in communities where we're living with conditions that impact our abilities, everybody is deserving and worthy of this information in an equitable manner. So, throughout the conversation, we've been talking about what weather alerts are, what they mean, when they are released, who is releasing them, and the forms that we receive this information in. And several times throughout the conversation, you had mentioned that when we receive weather alerts, not only are we receiving what is of concern, when it's taking place, where it's taking place, but there are what it sounds like recommendations on what actions that the National Weather Service is recommending that we, the public, take in response to that information. And so, if I myself wanted to learn more about the recommended or appropriate responses to different weather events, where could I retrieve that information? And for example, I'll use the severe thunderstorm watch versus a warning. If I wanted to understand the appropriate actions that I would need to take that are recommended by the National Weather Service, where could I retrieve that information so then I know how to better prepare? Is that something that's readily available via the National Weather Service's website?
We have something called weather.gov/safety, and that really goes goes into a lot of detail on all the different types of weather hazards that occur across the entire country. So that's certainly a resource that you have for it as well. The quickest one, if you need to know something during a type of event that we've issued for already, we have those messages at the bottom of those text products. So for our communities that have the hard of hearing or within our blind and low vision communities, there are ways of being able to convey that message, text over or the voiceover, anything like that. But in terms of where they are, we have them at the bottom of our messages that provides a bunch of different call to action statements is what we call them. They provide a lot of really useful information based off of what product is being issued. I can make changes to those call to actions based off of what is happening in the event. Have we already had impacts for an area, further off in the distance from, where you are? So there's just a bunch of different ways that we can convey that message. But in terms of the product itself, we're going to have those call to actions down towards the bottom. Before any of these products get issued, you can visit our website, weather.gov/safety, and that'll provide a lot of really useful information and be able to understand what to do in terms of any type of hazard that we have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that with me, but also our listeners, because again, I think it's important to understand now that we have a stronger sense of knowing the different types of alerts when they are issued, to then be able to respond in a way that protects our safety is key. So information that's available on websites such as the weather.gov/safety allows us to have that information so that we can appropriately respond when we do receive this information. Thank you, Austin. Safety, as we mentioned, is everybody's right. And with so many ways to receive weather alerts, it's important to set up multiple options that work best for you. That way, no matter where you are, you will have the information that you need to stay safe. So Austin, do you have any final recommendations here for listeners on making sure they're always connected to weather alerts, or anything else you would love to share today?
Yeah, you know your situation better than anyone. And now is the time to prepare for any of those hazards that could affect you. I always say it's much better to be over prepared than under prepared.
Yes.
Give yourself a number of options and ways to get these alerts via, phone, TV, radio, word of mouth. Tell a family friend that could be some bad weather today. Be prepared. Stay weather aware.
I love that. Be prepared.
We here at the Weather Service, we've got the eyes on the sky for you, and we always have your back. We just need you to act when we call on you to get to safety.
Thank you so much. It's time to bring this incredibly informative conversation to a close. Preparedness starts with awareness, as we've mentioned. And so by understanding weather alerts and making sure you receive them in a way that works for you, you're taking an important step towards staying safe. So thank you again, Austin, for joining us. It's been such a joy to have you here with us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll see you next time on another episode of Preparedness in Your Pocket. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Preparedness in Your Pocket. This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland Emergency Preparedness Network, formed in partnership with the Maryland National Capital Home Care Association and the Office of Preparedness and Response within the Maryland State Health Department. This podcast is hosted and produced by me, Kendall Lee, the EPN's Program Administrator, and edited by Frankie Cirquetti of Storia Studio. Our hope is to meet your curiosity with content that boosts your confidence and strengthens your preparedness. At the EPN, we truly believe that sharing is caring, and so we invite you to subscribe, like our podcast, and share it with friends, family, colleagues, or anyone in the community so that we may all empower each other's preparedness. Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to serve as legal or professional advice. While our discussions may include topics and products offered by the participating organizations, listeners should consult with relevant professionals or authorities for specific guidance and recommendations. The views expressed by our guests may reflect those of the hosting organization, though are not intended to replace official advice or guidelines. We can't wait to connect with you again. Until then, stay prepared and take good care.